Is it true, getting into the serious interview, are you sure you have never done this before, side by side, on one television interview that you remember?
No.
How long?
I don't remember ever being on television.
You
but
have.
I know I have,
I've seen
but I
some
don't
of your,
remember the experience.
I've seen some of your stuff. How long you known each other? How many years you known each other?
It's over
60s, in the 60s.
Yeah, the 60s.
And what was the first time you remember being aware of his name or his face, first meeting, ever?
You know, I remember, it's interesting you would ask that, because I remember the first time I saw you, and it was on 14th Street, between Avenue B and C, and I'm not really being funny now.
Yeah.
I hope I am, but I'm not trying to be funny, but I hope it comes off funny.
Anything in Alphabet
But I
City.
did see him on 14th Street. I was with my girlfriend at the time, who was Jill Clayburgh.
Oh, yeah.
And she and I were living together on Avenue, and she knew you from Sarah Lawrence because she did a movie with her, and she said that's really is a very good actor. And he had a kind of real interesting sort of look to him. I thought, geez, he had a lot of presence.
Whatever happened?
Even on 14th Street, he stood out.
Whatever happened to him?
That guy?
Yeah. And when do you first remember being aware of Al?
Well, I was aware of Al. He was doing a play, Tiger Wears a Necktie, and then I remember meeting, that was somewhere around that time, I think, with Jill Clayburgh, who I had done a movie called A Wedding Party when I was 19 with her, with Brian De Palma. It was his first feature, and Jill was the female lead in it, and I was one of the sidekicks of the lead.
And the rest?
That long ago.
He had a lot of energy. I remember that impression. He had a real energy, and you could tell he had a certain fire in him.
Speaking of energy, in watching the movie, you realize that really your natural habitat is the city of New York. It's kind of hard to envision the two of you guys anywhere else. How, Bob, you can start. How important is it? How much energy do you derive from that comes up through the streets of the city?
Well, New York. It's a great city. I always, you read about where's New York gone the way it was in the 70s or any time, and it always is changing into what it is at the moment, and that's as it should be. And so New York is a great place. It's got the energy. I run into people. I mean, we all know this, but you run into people from other countries, and they just feel it. It's a different experience for them. I kind of get the feeling it's sort of liberating, being from a more constricted environment, in a way, a more, I guess, a smaller town feel, provincial feeling, even in some of the big cities, that there's not the possibility of some real change. And in New York, you feel that when you come, and you can feel it if you're a New Yorker too. That to me is what. And you can also be anonymous at the same time. So there's a tremendous spectrum or spread of experiences.
Can you be anonymous?
Well, I'm not. I'm talking about even. I can in my way, but one.
Well,
can,
I don't recognize
normally,
Bob. Sometimes
you can be anonymous.
He wears those glasses and that hat. And I say, where is he? And
I'm here. You're spending a lot of time in Los Angeles. As a New Yorker, when I visit other cities and the sidewalk gets crowded, I hop into the street, and everyone stares at me like I'm going to get hit by a car.
Yeah.
And there's certain things, New York stuff, that doesn't translate to other places. Are you finding that?
Well, we were both born here. You were born here, right? Yeah. I was born in Manhattan. And what Bob was saying about the provincial aspect of New York City is true, because it is sort of like different worlds, different places, little provinces throughout the city. It's only a 6 mile long island, and the island of Manhattan. And everywhere you go, you can feel a different life, it's a feast here. It's great.
Speaking of a feast, there's one scene, you're in your apartment, and you got a nice bowl of pasta, and you put on some old school opera on vinyl on an old stereo.
Yeah.
Anything autobiographical there? Anything from your own life there?
The opera?
Any of it?
Well, the pasta.
It looked good. It looked like a nice little set piece.
Yeah. And as far as New York being and Los Angeles, what I find myself doing in Los Angeles, my children live in Los Angeles with my ex, and I see them a lot, so I'm there, and that's really the main reason I'm in Los Angeles. But I find myself going out in the still suburb I live in as much as I can on the porch, because I get to watch cars go by my street, and occasionally a dog goes by. But I get a sense of people that
vitality.
Way. Every half hour, a person walk by.
It makes you feel like
home.
I
wave and I say. It gives me. It's my. When you're homesick, you just go out on a porch and wait for somebody to walk by.
A little taste in New York.
That's got to be the start of a poem I'm composing. I'm
sure.
Yes,
a lot of poetry in the movie, so you're probably thinking of poetry. That's a segue. I have to ask this because this will air tomorrow, and we all know what day it is. And Bob, especially all you've done to help the city, especially with the film festival. How often do you get frustrated at, let's call it, the lack of progress since 9/11 downtown?
Well, I don't know. I mean, all the intricacies of everything. It is surprising that it's taken this long to get to a point, to get to where we are today. So I'm surprised. That's all I can say.
What does the day mean to you?
Well, it's like I always say. It was so unreal, and then real that there's no describing it, explaining it. It's and I have not lost anybody in the Trade Center. So when you go through that, that's a whole other thing. And all you can do is, empathize for what those people are feeling, what everybody's feeling who's lost somebody. What can you say?
Al, any thoughts on 9/11? Kind of hit us all.
Oh, no, just to echo what Bob has said. Also, it's vivid in my mind. I was here on the 10th of September, and I left for Los Angeles, and I was on a plane on the 10th of September, and we were on the tarmac for about 4 hours and take off, and I wanted to get off the plane and come back to New York just to do it another day. I got home and I heard about it on the 11th. I first thought that it was somebody got it wrong, and then I really wanted to come back, and I couldn't get back here because there was no because you feel the need to be here when it happened. Yeah.
To reconnect. Speaking of reconnecting, about the movie. Prior to this, those of us who are fans had the one scene in the movie Heat, just a crackling electric exchange of dialogue seated at that table. Well, now we have an entire movie of it. There's a scene in a bar restaurant, Montero's, where you guys are kind of kicking back, and you can tell there's dialogue planned for the scene, but you can also tell these are two guys talking. How often do you see each other normally? How much of a rekindling of her friendship had to happen on a movie set?
Well, we've known each other a long time. We're comfortable with each other, so I think those things help with us just being able to do the scene, and maybe whatever other things come out, that even if how subtle or subliminal almost they are. They have some. They're there. So
it's sort of what you, I guess, what you want to have in a relationship when you're acting with someone is a kind of you communicate in a way that through years and years of doing it anyway, and then knowing each other, there's a mutual trust there of some sort. I wish I could find another word other than trust, but it's you're comfortable with each other, and the what you're really trying to do is take the acting goes out of the scene, and rather you just sort of be with each other, kind of thing. It's as close as I can come to describing it.
Well, is it like that team building exercise where you fall backwards, and if it works right, you fall into somebody's arms, and the message is they have your back?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, you feel covered in a way, but you don't even think about it, actually, right, Bob? You don't think about it.
And also, John Avnet was he's very supportive of actors and really loves actors, so loves the process and so on, and that's a very essential ingredient in all of this.
He sets the tone and the environment of it, so you could just kind of walk into it.
How do you like playing cops? It's a change. It's a switch. Yeah. You've played cops on and off. You've killed people, both of you. Let's admit it. Let's get it out.
I like to play people.
Which is good.
That's a pretentious way of saying...
Most of your roles, conveniently, have
people,
been...
They are humans. I haven't gotten to the Martian thing yet, the alien thing. But we're working on it.
And you've been a thug, you've been a fucker.
Was that acceptable the way you just said it?
See that?
You just on the line.
Don't give me that face, because now I think I'm going to get killed. And speaking of that face you just gave me, you both have this weapon you can use as actors. Do you ever give that dead-eye look to a poor person who pulls you over or a waitress? Because you could just reduce somebody to tears. You could cause terrible things to happen with that little dead-eye look you just gave me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I can't do that to my kids.
No, I wouldn't.
They wouldn't
recommend it.
They wouldn't care.
Oh, it wouldn't work at home, you're saying?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. But you can use that as a weapon, you know that. Do you ever just throw it on somebody on the street just for fun?
Well, you sort of don't need to sometimes because it comes with the territory. I was driving, and I drove past this guy's parked car, and I knocked his rear view mirror off. Totally my fault, of course. So I stopped, naturally. I said, "What? Wow, I'm so sorry." And he says, "Look at my mirror. What did you do?" I said, "Well, whatever. I'll take care of it, whatever." I rolled down my window. He came to the window, saw it was me, and he said, "No, it's all right.
He
Don't
surrendered.
worry.
Yeah.
It's fine." I said, "What do you mean it's fine?" I said, "Your mirror's off." "No, please, here's the..." And, of course, it takes a while before you realize you are you.
Right.
You're walking around, you're not thinking that you're you, or whatever people think you are. You think you're you. You don't think you are what they think you are.
Yeah. Totally.
And then you find out.
But he surrendered. You had him.
I had him, and then I was offering money. I offered him my scarf. I offered him my driver's license. I offered him everything. I offered him the car, finally. No, I did. I did beg him to give me take my number. It worked out.
Do fans come up doing you guys? Do you get that a lot? Do you get people doing you because they want
you talking to me?
I get it because do you have a lot of that? Not much. Sometimes people will do it, but not as much as you would think.
I do it a lot to him.
Yeah, he does it.
Yeah, well, that's important. Keep him honest. Let's talk about politics. Who do you guys like?
I'm out of here.
Who do you like in the election, or do you have no opinion? Bob, you want to go first?
Yes, I like Obama, and I just don't see how we really need him in this country. We need him in the world. and he's going to make mistakes, and he'll be criticized for one thing or another. That's normal. But he really is what we need at this point, no matter what the other side says and all that spin and all that jazz that they give. It's a shame because, the one thing I hope with this whole thing is that everybody behaves in a dignified way and doesn't stoop too low to try and take out the other person, because it just reflects badly on them. That's all I would hope, and may the best man win, but do it with dignity.
Al?
Well, you got to alter that best man winning thing.
You think the country will be okay either way?
There's 3 men and 1 woman.
I think he's talking about the top of the ticket. Yeah. But do you think the country will be okay either way, or?
I don't know. I of course think about it, talk about it. I don't. I've stayed away from my opinions in politics. I've always stayed away from it. It just. I have my beliefs, and I think that we need whatever it's being promulgated now today in terms of change, and I'm certainly with Bob on that, and I think that for me the Democrats and Obama can deliver it, and I think that it's partially about how what's going on in the world and how we're perceived, and all the things that all the tentacles something like this has. It isn't. It's there's something. It's sort of like opening a window. It's kind of. It feels that way to me anyway. You never know how things turn out, but it feels like it's time for a new thing.
Serious question for either of you, because you've probably thought about this. Why does it seem that creative people are all tilted leftward politically? So few name celebrities willing to come out on the right, the small r right side of a cause as opposed to the left.
Well, I think that being an artist, you identify more with a more humane, a gentler look at things. And I think that if you want to compare the Republicans to the Democrats have that, just like I say, may the best man win. And try and do it with dignity as opposed to, everybody forgets and says things that they contradict themselves on. But somehow you feel with the Republicans, they grab it, they take it, they steal it. They don't do it in a gentle way. This is what I've seen. This is what I feel. So that's all I say, is that everybody should just do it with dignity with each other, because if they do, it really will. It's better for all of us, because then people get cynical about politicians, that they change what they said one thing, now they're going to do this, and if they try to maintain that dignity and stick to what they say, for better or for worse, people respect that and admit when they're wrong, and say, look, I made a mistake. Most importantly, I made a mistake. That's it. I think that helps a lot.
Back to the two of you. When you look out at the work that is out there, you read scripts, you read plays, you know what happens when you get together, you know what happens when a camera's rolling in a room with the two of you. Is there a piece of work out there that you've talked about doing, something you have in your mind, something you hope is created that you can hang in the Metropolitan Museum at the end of your careers, that you did together, you could hang in the Louvre in Paris as a piece of art and say, we did this? Is there any holy grail out there for the two of you, creatively?
No. Actors sort of, it's when Bob directs too, I think Bob is a great director also. And I think that when you find material that you want to do, but as an actor, you're sort of always in search of a role, and that's naturally you always think that something's going to come along that's going to allow you that freedom to go deeply into your own creative imagination, and it happens very rarely. So you sort of live in a kind of constant pursuit of that thing. You never know where it's going to come. Sometimes it's sort of like love. You don't know when it's going to happen. But you keep an eye out for it. But you are at the mercy of the role, really. And, of course, Shakespeare is there, and there's many roles in Shakespeare, but then it's this, where do you go do it? You know, it requires a lot of components in order to do these things. You just don't say, well, I'm going to go play. It's the very nature of life. You know, where is your life that dictates what you're going to do, where you're living, who has the similar interest to you in that area. Sometimes it's more, things are more accessible, and then sometimes they're not. I mean, it just depends on. I mean, if you get a steady gig like at Saturday Night Live, you know, you keep going, you know, and then, which I thought you were terrific. By the way, I saw you on it. You did some beautiful stuff. You're so funny.
I just studied tapes of Mr. De Niro up here.
So inventive, both of you. I mean, but I think that if you know, like Sid Caesar, if we remember Sid Caesar, I think everybody should get a kind of a re-showing of the Sid Caesar shows just to see what he did. But it was on for, I think it was 10 years, was it? I don't know. But there were opportunities with Jackie Gleason also, opportunities each week. They had a character, they did it, and they spin off the next week. And Sid Caesar had these incredible things that would happen. So he had an environment that was, I heard he was 94 recently, or 90 or something. Yeah. I had the good fortune of being on an airplane with him once. It was great to talk to him. And naturally, you get to meet Sid Caesar, and you don't ask him the things you want to ask him. Right. You sort of talk about other
kind of like meeting Al Pacino.
Oh yeah, right. But anyway, I'm sort of this whole idea of having an environment to do things in that allow for that. I mean, because there's just so much reading you can do, and scripts sort of don't fall out of the sky, and you go through your phases. But I think both Bob and I both feel that there's things out there yet to do that could make it to a certain artistic level, if you want.
So I mean, when you pick up a Glengarry or a Godfather or a Goodfellas, you must know, and maybe you'll know it when you see it. Maybe there's a young writer out there who's got you in mind.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's a complicated process because sometimes things you commit to them and they're not in the best, they're good, and they're basically good, and you've got to then improve them, and you don't know where it's going to go. That's the whole point. You're with the people you respect and care about, and you know it's going to, wherever you're going to go, it's going to be interesting and special.
That takes guts, though.
Yeah, and that's sometimes how you have to go into things.
What if it doesn't work?
There's no such thing as not working other than the financial part of it, which of course is an important part on the one hand, but it's more important to make it work for what it is, bearing in mind all the financial sides of it, whether it will be received by enough people to, hate to say this, will pay for itself, but you know, there is that. But I think it's there are movies that can do all those and be financially rewarding enough to make it happen, and to so that people will take a chance to do another one.
I like what Paul Newman said. Paul Newman said about working. You know, he would work if he'd work every 5 years if he just waited for the thing that struck him. So, you know, meanwhile, what do? You know, so you try to find things that maybe you can, they can somehow get, by everybody involved, somewhat be elevated, or you can get the opportunities. But also, you also learn about things when you do these things, when you do different projects. But most of the time, it's very rare that something comes along that you feel appetite for, a real appetite. Say, I really have a desire to do this. But there's a lot to go. I'm lucky enough to have a desire to do things on stage. So I've always had the stage theater to go to, and that served me a lot, because when I was, you know, between movies and didn't have anything, I try to get something, muster something up on the stage, and it really was very. It was very helpful to me because it helped me to make certain decisions that I wouldn't have made. I would have taken parts that I really shouldn't have taken early on in my career had I not the theater to go to, because it's just so long you can go without working, without doing that thing,
keeping your hands
whatever
on.
That is.
Yeah.
If you play a clarinet, you should be playing the clarinet, I think.
Is it an unfair question to ask guys in your line of work? I'll ask it anyway. Who do you see coming up? Who do you like? Who do you look for? Whose movies do you go see? Who are you cheering for?
Well, you never know when you're going to see it. Usually, they all come out at the end of the year, right? And the end of the year, they wait for December, and 400 films come out.
That's right.
For Oscars and stuff. So you wish they would spread them out a little bit more. But there's a lot of great people coming up. I mean, I'm stunned by at least by the movie acting I see.
Do you feel good about the industry? A lot of people are, say the movie business, reached its peak in whatever name your era. Do you feel good about the industry?
Well, I think that there are more movies, independent films now than there were before.
Yeah.
I remember when we were starting, there were very few independent movies. I worked with Brian De Palma, was an independent. I don't know if you did. I was thinking of Robert Downey Sr., Downey Jr.'s father. Yeah. He did some very good movies. And there were others, but not the way it is today. So that's a good thing for creative people.
Dog Day Afternoon today would be an independent film. The studio wouldn't make a Dog Day Afternoon, and at that time Warner Brothers made it. So it has changed in that respect, and sometimes it's tougher for the independent films. I just heard a good thing about Mickey Rourke, his movie and his acting and his performance in this movie he's done. Again, an independent film by a very good filmmaker.
Yeah.
So these things pop up, and but they usually don't have the finances, right? Because movies are expensive sometimes. I mean, it requires a lot of people, a lot of ingenuity and work, and sometimes they don't have the funding, so you can feel it in the picture. Sometimes it's worthwhile.
I just got the evil eye. I got 2 more questions. And I'll
but
go.
There are a lot of young actors. I mean, there are a lot of great young actors. Ryan Gosling, that's just the top of my head.
Yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, though he's older.
Johnny
Depp, Matt Damon,
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis, wonderful. He's in There Will Be Blood. I mean, he was great.
Oh my God,
the movie was just
what a great
movie. I'm not thinking of other people. They're just a lot of wonderful actors.
But you know them when you see them.
Yeah.
How much news do you guys watch? And what do you make of the national conversation? Are you upset by it? The state of our discourse? The arguments?
Well, like I was saying, I'm upset by some of the pettiness of the politicians, and sometimes the media sort of encouraging that because it encourages a petty fight. He said this, he said that. Obama said this about what McCain said or Palin. It's like a joke. What are we concentrating on? It's like, let's talk about real issues and real important stuff. Let's not get down to those petty, silly levels.
It does get you off the issues.
I mean, everybody gets cynical. Then you say, I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican. I don't want to be, nobody's, And Obama is trying to stay above that and just, be a real person.
And it's screen time, it's all about, keep the thing going because that's screen time. So that's part of it. Things get a little diffused because you got to keep the television machine going. So you say things and talk, and by very articulate people, I must say. I mean, it's interesting what they say and stuff, but then you run out of things, so you make things up more or less. And that's the way it goes, but that's the nature of our world. So the idea is how do you sort of deal with it and allow it to be as good as it can be? It's a process. And I think we're doing all right with that. And
last question, and not to sound like James Lipton, where do you go to be your happiest? What do you associate when you close your eyes with being yourself and being happiest in life?
Well, there's a lot of things. I can't say I'm here, but but I like just going away with my kids and going to, like vacation in the country or something like that, just on a weekend or stuff, or reading a book. I like to read a lot. I like to read the news. I read the newspapers. I watch the Today Show every day. I know you want to hear that, but I've been watching the Today Show since I was 10 years old.
That's I don't even think it was on.
I knew I wasn't even born then, but that's...
It was Channel 4.
Yeah.
But,
So that's when you're happiest. Happiest, I think he just said, watching the Today Show. Al, same question.
Well, it's like Bob said, be with my kids, going away and being with them. That's the happiest I can be.
And just going down.
I sort of never go down, but, I get halfway there. And that's great.
You came in today with a headset. I was surprised to see that. It's like you were managing
to be a kind of
air traffic, I think.
TV air traffic controller.
You make a lot of phone calls, apparently. You wear the headset,
that
tells me you make a lot of calls.
What happened is, I was in my car, and for some reason, and I don't know what it is, and someday we'll find out, but I've been followed a lot lately by the paparazzi. I don't know. I don't know. It's just it's just crazy. It's just I'm becoming the Britney Spears of the older set, I guess.
Probably the physical resemblance.
But they're all over
strong.
the place. I mean, they actually were. Where I see my therapist, they were out in some street. I never see anybody, and a guy pops up with a camera. So my picture got taken when I was on my cell phone, and I guess you're not allowed to be on a cell phone like this anymore.
Right.
But it was like the day they made the law or something. And I was in the papers. They look at Al. He's on a cell phone.
Yeah.
So I got one of these. Do I have it with me now?
It's a handsome unit. I saw it.
It really is impressive.
I saw it downstairs.
And I didn't know what you were talking about. And then I saw myself in the mirror, and I saw that thing sticking out.
Yeah, your headset was sticking when you came in.
Though.
Yeah, but I wondered.
Silver, it glows.
You wouldn't put the microphone out there, really, unless...
I don't know. Well, I'm learning. It's
okay. It's early yet. I wish you luck with that.
Yeah, and I drive, and thank you.
If he took it out, they're going to send him a free case of those headphones.
Yeah, oh, really? I can't find it.
Gentlemen, this has been fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. It's been great. Thank you.